glad to have you with us. We're excited to have you watch the video. We want to thank all of you who've been participating with us in LeadLAP, all of you who have been reading the blog, watching the videos as we've been on this journey of doing work to really tackle systemic racism in schools as everybody's gearing up to go back. And so we're adding something new today. We actually have one of the participants who's been with us in the LeadLAP chat for several weeks now as we've been on this journey together. Jillian is joining us. And so, Jillian, I'm hoping that maybe you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then maybe a little bit about what brought you into this Leading by Learning series in LeadLAP. And yeah, just tell us kind of how you got started, why you stuck around, and we'd love to know a little bit more about that.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. The very first part of this summer, I just jumped into Twitter, and because I needed a little something extra to do, I was terribly bored.
Hang on, guys. I'm so sorry. And I'm gonna kill editing. But is it just on my end, or is she really hard to hear? Is it just me?
I had a couple glitches. There was a couple when Jillian froze.
So, well, and I didn't see that on my end. I meant like voice really soft, like hard to hear. Is it clearer for y'all?
It's a little soft, but I can hear it.
Okay.
That would be the same for me. I can hear clearly, but it's a little soft.
Yeah, and my fear is, yeah, maybe, or even if you can talk up a little bit, because like our natural voices. So if I turn up the volume when I edit, it's going to sound like we're shouting to get your voice a little more audible.
Okay.
Yeah. We should have done a sound check in the beginning. I'm sorry.
So can you hear me better now, or is that not as great? I can unplug and see if that sounds better just from it picking up on my external cam.
Okay.
Is that any better?
Oh, wow.
That's better. That's a lot better.
So glad I said something. That's perfect.
That's crazy, because I teach Chinese kids. And when I don't use my earbuds, they can't hear me.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So,
yeah. You just got louder.
You did.
Totally.
Ooh, amplify. Okay.
Hey, everyone. Sorry for interrupting your video, but there was something that just happened, something really very profound that I want us to think about before we continue with the remainder of the video. You see, that first half of the video that you saw, or not even really half, it was just the first few minutes, it was going well. Beth and Shelly and Traci and Jillian and I were having a great conversation, but suddenly Traci said, "Hey, friends, I can't hear Jillian very well." Her voice was low. We really didn't think much of it, but Traci, being our video expert, said, "Yeah, we've got to catch that and fix it now. Otherwise, it's going to be challenging when it comes to editing." So we were like, "Okay, no problem." So we stopped, and Jillian paused for a minute, and we were trying to figure out some technical things. She unplugged her earbuds and took her earbuds out. And when she did that, her voice got really loud. By doing that, she accessed a different microphone. Her ears were cleared. They were opened up to the sounds that were around her. And her voice got louder. It was very interesting. And it really wasn't a big deal at the time. We were excited that her voice got louder. And we were able to proceed with the video. But it wasn't until after the video was complete and I went back and I watched the video again, and something really beautiful emerged. Jillian took out her earbuds, as we saw her do there. Her voice became louder. And the interesting thing about that is Jillian really told that story in the conversation she had with LeadLAP. She told us in the video, so as you continue to watch, you're going to hear some interesting stories from her about all of the things that she listened to and heard. And they were things that empowered her to find her voice. So it was very interesting to me to go back through and comb through the video for all the wonderful things that Jillian wanted to share with us, and to think about some of the questions that we would challenge ourselves with as we discuss Jillian's video in the next LeadLAP chat. I just want to encourage you, think about what it means to really clear our ears and listen. We talk about seeing folks. We talk about seeing color. We talk about seeing George Floyd and all of the terrible, horrible things that are going on with the racial crisis in this country. But what about listening and hearing and understanding? And so that's going to be our focus the next couple of weeks, is really listening with our hearts, with an intentionality, really taking risks, which is what you're going to hear Jillian tell you about. And also about finding your voice in essence. And that's what she's done. And so I challenge you, as you listen to Jillian tell her story this week, listen with clear ears, listen with your heart, think about what risks you can take and how those things are going to help you to find your voice. So once again, I hope you enjoy this video. It's going to be wonderful to have you listen before our chat next week, and just kind of think about what you saw and have those ideas and thoughts ready for our chat next week. But I think you're really, really, really going to enjoy this discussion with Jillian. So forgive me for the pause and the interruption, but this is just something that I wanted you to think about as you watch the video this week. I appreciate you.
And I'm excited to be here. And I think the first thing that I want to say is that I just jumped into Twitter back in May after school was out, just kind of looking for something to do. I lurked around some chats for a while. I read a book called Tech Like a Pirate by Matt Miller, which kind of got my wheels spinning. And I just kind of searched the little Twitter world there for all of those things that had to do with like a pirate, anything like a pirate. So, and when I came across the LeadLAP chat, I thought, ooh, that's pretty cool. And I saw Dawn and I saw Traci and I saw you guys. And I'm like, and then I really started to connect with a few people and then started to follow the same chats that they started following. And that's when Traci and Dawn we became friends, and we are kindred spirits. So it really was just kind of a natural thing. This was a summer for me where I don't want to say that I found myself and I found my voice, but I chose to be myself and I chose to be my voice. And that had not happened. This is the first time I've ever stepped out of that comfort zone. I've ever stepped in and branched out and stepped out of that little bubble that I've always grown up in. And I wanted to know more. I wanted to know more about being an anti-racist. I wanted to know more about how can I use that in the school setting. I jumped into a book club. We read Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, which blew my mind because I had no idea that I had, negativity bias, that I just thought, you know what, I'm this little, Southern girl, grew up in Southern Baptist church. And then I started looking into that, and do you know that the Southern Baptists actually are a split from the Baptist church, and the Southern Baptists were actually racist? So, I just like, oh my gosh. So every little step, every little thing just started this journey for me. And it was very cathartic. It was very introspective. And that's just where I just felt like I wanted to really jump in and not just, answer a few questions here or there, but it really meant something to me. I teach second grade. So I teach littles. I teach in a private school down here in Florida, and the majority of our students are white. My teaching partner is Black, and we are TFFs, and we do everything together. She's the only Black teacher in our school. And after a lot of the racial tension things happened this summer, we sat down together and we went to lunch. I think I told Dawn and Traci this, and we went to lunch, and I said to her, I said, are you okay? She goes, I'm not. She goes, did you know that not one person from our school reached out to me? Not one person said, hey, I'm just checking in. How are you doing? Not one person sent me a text. email, and it broke my heart. Broke my heart. So that's when I thought, okay, something's got to change. And we sat down and we talked for 3 hours that afternoon about what are we going to do? How are we going to find our voice? How are we going to start a transformation in our small little community, our small little private school? It's got to start here, but we've got a plan. So that's kind of where I am. And I loved the LeadLAP and the Grit Crew conversations because I think it was real. And it's not just, answer a few questions, but it's, it was the application. It was the resources that we have. I mean, you guys have armed us with so much that we can take and use and utilize and share. So that's what I'm fired up. I'm fired up about that, about all the things we're going to do with our kids this year, but mostly about myself and using my voice and amplifying my voice to make a change.
Wow.
Wow. Right?
That was a lot.
That's beautiful. That was a lot of beautiful.
And Jillian, I think I say wow because, I am a person of color, and I listened to you in a private school, Southern Baptist, predominantly white, one Black person, and it's perfect storm is the wrong word, but it's a scenario that plays out over and over and over, where that one Black person is not seen, or even if you're in a sea of a very diverse school, it can be 50 Black people and we still feel like one person, or we still feel like we're not seen. So the fact that you saw her is there's just no words for it. But I think we've all talked, Jillian, and we've seen, just from the LeadLAP conversation alone, such a powerful fire in you, a fierceness. You even said an urgency to act, and I love that. And we did something last week and watched 13th, and you were a force on fire. Can you tell us, what were you feeling when you watched? I mean, we could just see the emotions, but that's not our story to tell. So tell your story as it pertains to the 13th.
I had heard of the movie, and that day, I think I had texted Dawn, and I said, Dawn, I can't make it tonight. My husband wants to go watch the sunset. I'm like, I can't tell him no. He's been out of town all week. So we went and watched the sunset, and the whole time I'm watching, I'm like, 8:30. I'm like, come on. Sunset, got home, got my computer, sat down on the couch. He's watching his shows. It's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm sorry, but I have to watch this. Do you want to watch it with me? He goes, sure. So we watched it from the very first. So we were late joining in, but that, I think, the very first guy, and I don't know all their names, but when he started talking about how it was, I can't even remember the name of it. It was not micro segregation. It was excessive segregation. When, we're talking about trying to, it was after, I can't remember. Y'all are going to have to edit this part. But it was just the things that have happened in history that they thought was going, it was the whole thing with Reagan, and how, his focus on the war on drugs, led to that more aggressive segregation. Then it wasn't supposed to do that, but it did. And it was like, whoa. I loved Ronald Reagan, but I had no idea, those things, the political things that were behind the scenes, that somebody like me, I'm not a political person. I don't understand a lot of what goes on, but my gosh, every little thing in that movie just was so on point, and so like, everybody needs to see that. Everybody needs to understand, when you were putting people in prison of color in prison for loitering,
for, speaking against somebody, for, and that's it in itself is slavery again. And it just went on and on and on. The whole thing about the companies that use prisoners to do all their work. That's slavery. Oh my goodness. So we're still facing that today. That's still very real. It's not gone away. And already, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I mean, it's taken a back burner on all of the news channels and across the nation. I mean, nobody's talking about it. We're such a 72-hour, my husband always says we're a 72-hour nation. We focus on things, and then we back off after 72 hours. You don't hear about it again. So yeah, that lit me. That truly lit me. And that's when, so here's what happened with that. I do have a more diverse class this year, which I'm really excited about. I have several minority students, which I'm pumped about. But we also, I had one little boy 2 years ago. He was from New Jersey. He had just moved to Clearwater, and he and his mother and his grandmother, he lived with his mother and his grandmother. His father had been killed when he was 2 years old. He was my only little black boy, and I loved him to death. But he would come to school, and he would always look a little bit different. He was the only one in my class, and he had the cute little dreadlocks that would just stick up on his head, and he was so sweet. But kids would make fun of that, and they were like, "Oh my, why are you wearing your hair like that, Kassir? That doesn't look right." And I would stick up for him, and I'd go, "Hey, you guys, his hair looks so cool. I really love that." That's all I did. I didn't go, "Well, let's talk about that." I wonder, what do you wonder about Kassir? What do you wonder? What do you think about when you see somebody that has something different than you? I wasn't that teacher a couple of years ago. I kind of just let it go. And after watching that movie, my heart, holy moly, I just got so convicted. I had his phone number. I called his grandmother last night, and we had the most beautiful talk, grandmother to teacher. And she was always so supportive in my classroom. She was one of my room moms. She's a former educator. She's a lovely woman. And she let me talk. She let me say everything probably I have said to you about the movie I've watched, about the conversations I've had, about how I'm feeling, how I've gotten to this place, why I didn't defend him, or why I didn't invest more in his life. And she was so quiet, like didn't say anything. And I stopped, and I realized she was crying. She was bawling. She goes, "You don't understand how much that means to me." And I said, "Denise," I said, "that was 2 years ago." She goes, "It doesn't matter. You see, you hear, you're feeling." She goes, we didn't feel that, we didn't come to this school, to be the exception. We came to be, with everybody else," she said. But she said something, and I wrote it down, because she said, "Till our hearts recognize it, our minds never see it." And I will remember that for the rest of my life. That is what she said. She said, "I cannot thank you enough for having the courage to call me and to admit, the things that you've admitted, and to have the conversation that you've had. That is a great beginning to your journey." She goes, "Whatever I can do to support you, I'll come into your classroom. I would love to read to your kids. I would love to share with them anything they want to ask." And I'm like, yes. I'm like, that is taking it beyond me. Now somebody else is joining with me. You guys, it is just, that's all it takes. I was so worried about, what if I do something wrong? What if this is not the right thing? What if I totally offend her? And I didn't. And even if I did, it's okay because I took that risk and I did it from my heart. So that's part of what I've been through. And I think probably probably the hardest thing I've ever listened to was Traci's podcast with her family. When she didn't play any music, she's always got the cute little pedagogy music going, but she talked about her family, and her family came on, and Quentin Jr. and Donovan came on and talked about what it meant, what their everyday meant, and what their everyday looked like. And I think I've listened to it 3 times because I want to hear it. I want to, and I told this grandmother that too. Let me tell you what my friend Traci told me. And she said, yeah. She goes, everything you've just said, that's what we had to do. We had to teach our children not to be a threat. So all of these things you guys put together, the chats, the podcasts, the blogs, I never probably would have ever in a million years have called this grandmother or talked to her or talked to my teacher partner about what can we do beyond our classroom. How are we going to spread this to our community? How are we going to spread it through our school who, may be acceptive to it, may not be. I don't know. But it has to be done. So that's where we are.
And Jillian, I love, so much of your story that you shared with us is centered on the fact that, as just, the kind, caring person that I know that you are, because you are my friend, you were able to see the problem, right? You came to our chat and you heard the discussions and participated in the discussions and saw the resources and watched the film. And you talk of this awareness and this kind of internal dialogue you've had with yourself and just, developing an awareness. But we have so many educators and administrators and school leaders and parents and community members who just aren't even taking the time to have that dialogue with themselves or even with others. Many people are, and we talk about privilege, right? Privilege to go about living the lives that we have. And, if we choose not to see the situation and the circumstances and all of the things that people of color are faced with each day, they can go ahead and continue that existence and not have to really worry much about what life will be like for them, right? Because their existence is, simply that, their existence, and it's safe and protected. I struggle a lot with how to get my white friends to really come to terms with the fact that, they need to begin having that internal dialogue and need to start developing that awareness. And I wonder sometimes, we're doing, I shared with Shelly and Beth and Traci earlier, I'm so excited about the work that we're doing in the chat and the conversations that we get to have, and just, to see kind of the evolution of thinking and the transformation that's taking place. And we're reaching a lot of folks, but I think as I go back to my own school, being the only Black teacher in my school and one of 2 Black teachers in my entire district, how do I get through to the folks that work with me? How do I help them to understand the struggle, not just for me, but for our students who are there, who we're working to support, our students of color? What does that look and sound like when we get back into the school and people say to me, what have you been doing all summer long? Well, here's what I've been doing. Most people see, right? Most people who are active on social media and friends with, they're seeing that. I wonder what our conversations are going to sound like, what my conversations I think about, what your conversations or Beth's or Shelly's or Traci's are going to sound like when we come back to school this fall. You know, it's not something we've all committed. Like, we're not sweeping this under the rug. And yes, we know COVID is an issue. And yes, we've got remote instruction and blended learning and all those things that we've got to deal with. But how do we get our peers on board? It's those courageous conversations. It's the, you know, taking action, all those things. But I just can't help but think about what that's going to sound like when we return to school this fall.
Yeah. And I've even made the comment to my principal, and I said, you know, I know we've got 3 days. We start on a Wednesday. We've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we've got, you know, the week we're really supposed to dig into our academics. I said, would you have a problem if we kind of just put that, you know, I really want to build my social and emotional learning with my kids first. Mm-hmm. And I do have a diverse group of kids, and I do want to, you know, I've read the same book every single year on the first day of school for the past, you know, 20 years. I'm not going to read that book. No, I want to read Lovely by Jess Hong. I want us to understand and accept our differences right from day one. You know, I just think that's going to be what helps us build our community. That's what's going to help us build our awareness. I mean, our kids out on the playground, they need to look around, and they're old enough. My kids are in 2nd grade. They're old enough to understand those differences. They're understanding what character means. We talk a lot about character, honesty and patience and kindness. And so why not include all that in with the diversity? So yeah, and hopefully that would catch on. I just would hope that other teachers could catch on and see what we're doing. I don't want to be like, hey, look at us, but I think we're going to be able to make such a difference, just the two of us, that they're going to go, what are you guys doing different? You know, what is it? So I'm just hoping that makes a difference.
I think what I've noticed too, we spoke earlier in the week, and something that we've talked about, and you're hitting on this here, there are a lot of excuses people make for their racism or for their lack of understanding of it. And what I just heard you say, celebrating differences, like seeing color. I think so many people think it's not okay to say, oh, but I don't see color, or there's not a racist bone in my body, when we don't recognize that racism is a verb as much as it is a noun. And I think you just hit on so many of those. Maybe that sometimes for me, I used to, but now I understand that, wow. And that's something I connected with you deeply as you were reflecting in the chat. And as we watched the movie too, is that, you know, I think you and I almost typed the exact same thing of, so much of this I didn't realize so much of this was going on because I could go to sleep at night and not have to worry about it. Mm-hmm. You know, I could turn the movie off and go, and the system that our world, or especially our country, is set up, it works for me because I'm white. So no, I didn't think anymore about, you know, the drug laws or all of that stuff when I was growing up, because it worked. All the stuff that was created worked. And you tweeted the almost exact same thing. And that was, so it's awesome that you're bringing light to that. And I think it's also really awesome as a teacher leader that you're making this happen, because as a school administrator, I tell people all the time, like, yes, I have the opportunity to lead change in a little different way, but teacher leaders make it happen. When teacher leaders are like, because if you invite your staff to join you in that, you're going to get a lot more folks. And if I said, hey, anybody want to do, like, it's just, you're making it happen every day and living it. And that's just super inspiring. And I think you are really affecting more people than you realize, just by the things that you're not being silent on in social media too, which is very brave and awesome that you're doing that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Starting to get dark here on the farm, so I had to turn on my phone light there.
And Jillian, I have to say, you know, in fact, I had in my head to ask you about the podcast, but I ended up saying that about the 13th. I don't know where my mind was. I guess I was just kind of consumed with the emotions, just looking at you on our screen, that our weekly chat has transformed to the point where we actually have a participant. We're sitting here talking about your transformation and your awareness and your urgency to act. So I think I've just been consumed. But I want to say, I have to just speak this. You when you talked about when you talked about my podcast, you said my family's, you spoke each person's name. And as I say that, you should see the goosebumps in the hairs that you said each one of my babies and my husband's names. And I need you, I need you to understand, and everybody, if anybody watches this video, why I feel the way I feel about that. Because even this summer, in the educational realm on social media alone, not talking about the school year, just this summer, dialogue and interaction with people, when people are Black people, African people, when people are being introduced, a lot of times a white person will be reading names and actually say the words, oh, I can't pronounce this, and just keep going to the next name. How do you think you just made that person feel? So I know this was totally different, but just to hear you say my family's names when it's so normal for people to use the words, oh, I can't pronounce this, I'm not even going to try. I've seen it on TV, I've seen it on the news, I've seen it on entertainment shows, and it's devastating to me. So that one piece alone, if people know people's names, that's powerful. That shows that you care, that you see me, just like the grandmother, that's why she was consumed with emotions, that you took the time, you saw her. So it just, I don't know if you know how important that is. So I just wanted to share how much that means to me.
Thank you. I think I've always been a name person. Like I just, that's how I've always connected with my kids. It's like I had a Hispanic boy last year, and his name was Jafet, and it was spelled Jafet. Well, all the kids saw that, and they're like, Japheth, Japheth. I'm like, no, guys, it's Jafet. I said, let me tell you why it's Jafet, because when you speak Spanish, the J is silent. And so it was such a teachable moment. But from that moment on, they never called him Jafet. They call him Jafet. So it was, it's just like we have to teach kids, to use names and to speak names. And I think when you speak a name, it does speak to your heart. I know when I talk to my parents, when I talk to my families, I don't say your child or your son. I'll say, hey, Joshua, did such a great job today. I said, you wouldn't believe, so it just is that personal thing too. Like you said, it's not just okay, I see you and I hear you, but it's, I know you because I know who your family members are. And probably because I've listened to your podcast like 5 times on that whole one. I can't stop listening to that story because it just, and then when you posted the pictures of them, doing the different things in the community, and Traci, it just, that speaks volumes to people, that's not a norm, that is, and that's not something that even white kids do. That's so special. And the foundation that you and Quentin have set for your kids, that's what you have taught them is invaluable. And that's what I don't know if my kids get that at home. I don't know what they're getting. I don't know what they're bringing into the classroom. So as much as I can try and connect with them and build that foundation for them, for the little boy, who I talked to his grandmother, and his dad had, passed when he was 2. His, he doesn't have a father figure. So what can I do to help, strengthen him? My husband used to come in and read stories to my kids, and, they always, where's Mr. Tim? Where's Mr. Tim? Is he coming in today? No, he's got to work, you guys. He'll come in. But I loved having my husband come in and read to my kids, because I did have several students that didn't have fathers, and so it's just, I don't know, as much as we can just have that purposeful planning and that purposeful authenticity with our kids and speak truth in love. It doesn't have to be a, Black Lives Matter, that kind of thing. But it's just more of a heart work thing that we need to do with our kids.
Jillian, one of the things that you've said, and I think you're striking a chord with all of us as you're speaking about your journey and transformation. And, one of the things that we've all said, is that your commitment, that urgency to act. And, another thing that we've all talked about together, and I think it is a part of that action and taking action, and you've hit on it many times in some of the stories that you're sharing with us, is that it doesn't matter. Like for me, I am going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. And I am not going to stay silent to protect myself. And we've had some conversations about that, the four of us, about when people are saying things like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, or I don't want to say it, and it keeps them from taking the step to have the type of journey that you've been sharing with us today. And you've given so many examples of that. And I that piece that is yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but that doesn't matter. That's not what matters here. And so your examples of things like picking up the phone and calling the grandmother, the types of things you're sharing, I think are such great examples of, it isn't about me. It isn't about my comfort. It's about, you've used these words too. It's about truth. It's about authenticity. It's about my learning. It's about my growth. And I just wanted to point that out and share that with you, is that really resonates in the stories that you're telling. And it's so powerful. And I think it's something that it gets in people not wanting to be uncomfortable, stops them from moving forward. And that hasn't stopped you. And that's really powerful. And that for me, that has been personal growth and a journey for me too, over this summer, and getting a phrase that's similar is that finding my voice, using my voice in the right way. And so I think I thank you for that, because it's a really really powerful statement about the work and the journey that you're on.
Well, and Jillian, I'm sorry, but my little son keeps letting my dog out, so I've been having to chase after her. So that's what we love about just going live, is that
This is what you hit record.
Oh my goodness, you just
hit record and go.
And I definitely have been listening, but I echo what Shelley said. And I used to be so scared about saying the wrong thing that I said nothing, which was definitely the wrong thing. And I appreciate that you've just shared and hopefully given people a chance to see that you can always change. Just because it used to be a certain way doesn't mean we grow every single day. Every single day we grow, and we recognize the things that we messed up on, and we move forward for sure.
It reminds me of the quote that we have in our LeadLAP presentations, Beth, the one that we have towards the end that talks about, you have the right to grow with no apologies, that you don't have to be the same person that you were a year ago, a month ago, a week ago, or even 15 minutes ago. You have the right to grow with no apologies. And that's, as you're talking about that, it makes me think of that quote, which I think is, we've had that in our presentations from since the beginning, and we've made shifts and changes over the years, but that's never left, because it's powerful.
I love that. Oh my goodness. All right, I need to sketch that one out.
Yeah. I'll send you a copy. I'll send you a copy of the quote.
Yes, please. And you mentioned just the uncomfortableness, and my heart, I know when I picked up that phone, my heart was pounding and out of my chest, and I was almost like, don't answer. I'll just leave a message. You can call me back. And she answered, and I'm like, oh no. And it was so uncomfortable. But after we started talking, and I could be myself, and I could just share my heart, I'm like, this is not so hard. It's really, it doesn't matter how it's received. It's what I've been able to get out. So I know it's not going to be received well by a lot of people, a lot of the things that I'm going to say, But now I think I feel better about taking that risk and moving forward.
Well, and you spoke about Zaretta Hammond's work earlier, and you're all about you're rewiring your amygdala. You're learning how to work through that fear, and I think that's it's so awesome to see it in person. And I think what you just said too, it's like, who did we used to be worried about offending? The people that were offensive. Like that's not who I should be worried about offending. You know, that's not okay. Like so thank you for bringing light to that for sure.
Jillian, you are truly an example of leading by learning. You know, you're learning and you're leading conversations. You're stepping out there. You're taking risks, and you know, I think people rather you take a risk than just be quiet, and because you have so much value to add. You know, and your actions, even if they just touch one person, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. You've already touched one person. You've touched two. You've touched many people, but two tangibles: the grandmother and the teacher on your team teacher. I mean, those are two powerful connections that those two people will never forget. That you checked on them. They will never forget, and they've probably told that story countless times. I assure you, they have. So just keep up the work of your heart, and I just thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. I would definitely, absolutely 100% agree with Traci. I think the real example comes in, Jillian, that I hope others recognize in the conversation is that coming from a place of authenticity is what is important, right? When we're doing this, whether we're Black or white, whatever, and we're out here just trying to make a change, it's about coming from a place of authenticity. And you demonstrate that in every way, right? All of the things that you shared with us tonight are actions that you have chosen to take out of love and out of the desire to do what's right and to do what is good. And I think that's the example that everyone really needs to follow, that the reason for doing this work is because it's right and because it's good. It's what we should be doing and because we want to do it. And I really think as we move forward, as we continue to have those discussions in LeadLAP, you know, those are things that we need to be thinking about in the background, is helping people to really and truly understand, you know, when I think about what do those conversations look like in the future, what kinds of authentic conversations, you know, the heart work you talk about, are we doing to try to help this transformation happen? So I thank you for that. That means a lot to me.
Thank you. It
Well, I
means
think,
a lot. Wow.
yay. Well, thank you so much, Jillian. We appreciate you so much for being here tonight. I think kind of as any closing remarks as we wrap up for this week's chat.
Ooh,
Anybody?
from
Good? Okay. Well,
Thank
awesome.
you, Jillian. Thank you for sharing your heart and for getting a text or a call from Dawn. What, yesterday, Dawn? Was it yesterday, the day before? Hey, we have this idea. And will you go on this journey with us? I can't tell you how much I know. I'm certain I speak for all of us when I say thank you and how much we appreciate you taking this time with us tonight and sharing your journey. It really is making a difference.
Anytime. I thank you guys for what you're doing. So keep the fight, keep it up, because it's making a difference. I mean, if it's, 5-6 people and we keep going out and do 5-6 people and we keep sharing and they keep sharing, it's going to keep growing. So I'm just so pleased to be a part of it. So thank you.
Oh, thank
Well,
you.
I'm going to throw down a little challenge. I haven't talked to anybody about this, so hopefully they'll still love me and not block me here. But
Bring it, Beth.
In the spirit of Jillian, bring a friend with you this week to LeadLAP. Bring someone that may not, and if they're not comfortable tweeting yet, help them get their comfort, help them get their Twitter sea legs. Bring them with you to help roll that snowball, as Dave says. And because we truly together, it takes a village. That's one thing that we've talked about. We've got to overcome those setbacks. We've got to make sure we're not making excuses. So bring a friend this time to help, because when we have that grit crew behind us and with us, that's when it gets hard, which is going to get hard, right? We're in August, right? But once school starts, it's going to get that much harder. So we need all the support we can have. So bonus points if you bring 2 people.
Okay.
Love it. It's Bring a Friend Week on LeadLAP.
There we go. That's it.
That's a good idea.
Awesome.
I love that.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you Saturday, 9:30 Central Time, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.